He's our friend. He's our member, dynamic brother, spiritual brother, academic brother, in pursuit of the truth and sharing it with each and every one that he comes in contact with. Let's welcome our brother, Bamidele Demerson.
Oh, well, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
I don't have your bio right before me, or
that's okay.
I would just.
I'm the curator at the African American Museum and Library. I'm the chief curator here, so I'm pleased to be here today.
We're pleased to have you.
Okay.
Yeah.
If there are any questions or concerns, don't wait till the end of the presentation. I have about 50 or so slides. They can be fast moving, but I would prefer us to have conversation and discussion. And even if we cover 10 of them, I'd rather cover 10 well than to cover the entire set of slides. So with that, let me see if I can share screen. Hold on. Okay. I pressed share screen. So what is that supposed to do?
I'm sorry, say again.
I've pressed the share screen, the green button.
Okay, when you share the green button, and then for mine, the lower left-hand corner says share sound, and then click the blue button all the way to the right.
Oh, share. Okay. Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, and I still have the big Zoom screen in front of me as well.
Yeah,
so,
I don't know why you have that. Oh, there we go. All right.
Okay. Well, I don't want you all to necessarily see these slides on the side. How do I eliminate that?
So go all the way to the bottom line, and then that one that looks like a little come over to the right, all the way to the right. Mm-hmm. and then that now go down. See that bottom line? Now go over two more to the right.
Okay.
Right, to the right. One more.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
Slideshow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Well, today we're going to focus on resonances of Africa in Black American folk art and life. And so these are images that you can get from the internet, or that I sourced from the internet. So these are not my own images, but they are ones that I have used over the years when preparing presentations. And this is a presentation that I like to do at any time of the year, but I particularly like doing this around the time of Kwanzaa, especially on the day of Kuumba, which is creativity. And so let me just start out by saying that we're focusing on human beings that were caught in the vortex of the transatlantic trafficking in African captives, or sometimes people call it the slave trade. I can't call it the slave trade because they were not slaves. They were captives. They did become enslaved, but I use the term captives. And they were really bound for a, quote, new world. And I'm saying, and I put new world in quotation marks because it was really part of the world. But of course, Europe was considered the old world, and the Americas were, quote unquote, the new world. Over the course of the centuries, during this process of being enslaved, then being the abolition of slavery, and then the different continuing restrictions on racial caste in America, we learned to hide Africa from the Europeans. But in the process of doing so, we learned to hide our Africanity from ourselves as well. So, let's see. So, I'm going to pretend that all of these people I have just asked, who's interested in going on a trip? And you see everybody raise their hands. So, and so I'm asking you, are you ready to go on a trip? So pretend you and a group of 400 random persons are placed on an airplane. You only have the clothes on your back. You are told you can take nothing else. And you and the passengers on board are given no information. You do not know where you're going, and you don't know who you will meet once you get there. You and the other passengers are going to experience a rocky landing. So, get ready. Although you were not told you can take anything aboard. What did you bring anyway? And I said, okay, write your responses on a piece of paper. Well, you don't have to write them on a piece of paper, but I want you to share your responses with everybody here today. Mama Fania, what did you bring? You're on mute.
Brought your language,
Oh, okay.
spirituality.
Okay. Okay. Brother Shango,
My,
Minister Shango, pardon me.
no problem, no problem. I'm taking my cell phone because also I got my Apple Pay on it.
Okay. You can't take anything.
Oh, a cell phone? Oh my goodness.
Okay. Well,
I take nothing.
Let's see if I can see everybody
Wow.
that's on here.
Incredible.
Okay. Well, wait a minute, let me go back. And so Sister Debbie, what do you?
I would bring all of my memories and all of the things that, this faith or whatever it is that I had that, sort of got me through every day. I would definitely try to hold on to that while I was on the plane, and that would try to center me or settle me down or something like that. Maybe even a family member to hold their hand.
Okay, well, these are all very good responses. And of course, I should not be surprised because I'm speaking to Wosei. And so when we think about that, you bring your memories with you. And now perhaps you have an impression of what the African captives felt when forced to undertake the transatlantic crossing. In addition to the clothes on, this should be on the clothes on their back, what did they bring with them? And so they brought with them memories. And so when I give presentations, I talk about the cultural memories of Africa or Africanity and the cultural reclamations of Africanity. Sometimes we feel that we have lost so much of our memory that we try to reclaim a connection to Africa. And we do so, and that's understandable. But even as we do that, we have to remember, we have to understand that we have memories that are still active and that are still important. Black people often exclaim, we are an African people. I cannot tell you, I grew up with that phrase, we are an African people. But do we really believe this statement is a question that I would always ask. What is the evidence of Africanity beyond phenotype? And by phenotype, I'm referring to observable physical characteristics, such as dark skin color, coiled hair texture, brown eyes, full lips, and so forth. But is there any cultural evidence of our connection to Africa? And if so, how do we interpret or verify this proof? And more fundamentally, how do we define culture? Brother Henry, how do we define culture?
That would be the experience that you have within a community, and you would express it in many different ways, either how you dress, the food you eat, the people that you hang with, the churches that you go to, and your education. And as a senior, I am just finding that out. You wouldn't expect that being around Wosei all the time, but I'm first time in my life interacting with my family, and I'm surprised, and not surprised. I am fascinated by how much that made a difference to the family that I grew up with and the family now that I'm interacting with.
Okay, so really, I mean, you gave the perfect answer. Culture, in essence, is our way of life. That's a real simple definition, but it's all of the things that you mentioned. And so when we think about we are we are an African people, when I would say that, articulate that phrase, we are an African people, or that statement, I would invariably have somebody in the audience to stand up and say, or to sit down and say, I ain't never left nothing in no Africa. Have you all heard that before?
Yes, yes, yes.
And I always say, you're correct. You didn't leave anything there. Your ancestors brought Africa with them. And so, no, you didn't leave anything in Africa, but your ancestors brought brought Africa with them. Now, whether or not they could always operationalize everything that they brought with them is another story. And so we're going to start, we are an African people, and we're looking at a plantation scene. This is called The Wedding Party. And this is a piece that is in the Abby Aldrich Rockefeller collection. And it's it's in a museum in Colonial Williamsburg. And so we see at this wedding party, we see men and women that are gathering, and we see one man here. If you can see my cursor, you see he's playing a drum. The other is playing an instrument that is the banjo, and we have them, of course, dancing here on the left side of the screen. But notice that the banjo and the drum, those are two important instruments. But let us also notice this pottery that's sitting on the ground. This looks like unglazed pottery to me, and especially this brownish or reddish piece, or the terracotta colored piece. And one of the things to keep in mind is that we brought our understanding of scientific principles. So if you have an unglazed piece of pottery, and African people on the plantation created their pottery from the clay as well. I mean, from the clay that was available, the deposits in the earth. And so when you have an unglazed piece of pottery and you put water in it, it cools or refrigerates by the condensation on the outside. And so that's a scientific principle that we understood and appreciated. So we brought scientific lore to the Americas, but we also brought with us a love of music. And so we're looking at a drum. This is sometimes designated as the Akan drum. This is from Virginia. It's made of wood, and it has a deerskin covering or a top on the drum. And some people have, it's in the British Museum. It's not here, even though this is from Virginia. It is their oldest African-American artifact in the British Museum in London. But some have described this particular artifact as being of Akan origin. And that's because it looks so closely to the Akan drum that's here on the bottom screen. And this is that same drum on the upper screen. The upper portion of the screen. The one from Virginia. Now, the one from Virginia is only about, I think, 18 inches in height, as opposed to these very large drums that would be maybe about 3 or 4 feet tall. And so in many cases, we know that drums were taken away, and it could not be heard on plantations. In some cases, they were outlawed. In other cases, people would reinvent tin pots and so forth, and turn them over, or basins, and drum on them. And so they found ways of creating the percussive instrument. And even when we didn't have those instruments, we had our bodies. And so we could do the ham bone, which is the body becomes a percussive instrument. And so we brought Africa with us. When we think of instruments, this image to the upper left is from New Orleans. And so you'll see this is an early banjo. And you can see that it was made with a gourd. You see the rounded figure here. But to the right is a person playing a more modern day banjo, one that has been manufactured. And so you would never know that the banjo is linked to this instrument called the kora. Now, the kora is, if you remember roots, Kunta Kinte taught his daughter Kizzy that the word for quarterphone instruments, or the guitar, as she called it, was a ko. And a ko is elision of kora. And so, so we see the lineage here, but now we don't even think of the banjo. African Americans no longer play the banjo for the most part. We think of it as a European or a European American instrument associated with those, particularly in the Appalachian mountain areas. So that's a case of cultural transference. When we think about the banjo, yes. Sure. Okay, when we think about the banjo, I love this piece to the right by Romare Bearden, who's one of my favorite artists. And so we see the quarterphone instruments. We see two men playing guitars, or holding guitars, and one holding a banjo. But of course, I think of Henry Ossawa Tanner, and I cannot help but remember the importance of this lesson. It's called the banjo lesson. And so it shows the relationship between alternate generations, the elder and the junior. And so there is a generation that's in between them, and that would be the parent of the young boy. And so, and perhaps the grandparent, and the parent, the generation that's in between, that's not pictured here, would be the parent of the young boy. And of course, so this becomes alternate generations because it's a relationship between a grandparent and a grandson in this particular case. And those in alternate generations have a particular closeness that are described in many African societies as an enduring bond. But it is the responsibility of the elders to teach and transmit that knowledge to the younger people, to the younger persons in the society. And so we see this appreciation of music then is passed intergenerationally. And if there are any questions or any comments, please stop me, because I will move through these things rapidly.
But Brother Bamidele, may I share my screen and just play a little bit of the kora?
Oh, okay, yes, by all means.
All right, and I'm going to stop your sharing just so
Okay.
I can share this. And this is Sona Jabode, and her father is a kora player. This is her in the middle, and this is the kora, and this is how it sounds. I think it's one of the most beautiful instruments. I'm going to stop it there, but there is, she was on 60 Minutes, perhaps about,
2 months ago, not too long ago.
yes, about 3 months ago. And traditionally, that instrument is passed from father to son.
Yes.
Her father is a legendary kora player and a jaliba or griot. And she is carrying on the tradition. She started a musical school in Gambia, and I just think she's fantastic.
Yeah, the girls are not playing it. And the boys, didn't her son playing it also?
Yes. I see Mama Fanya's hand is up, and so why don't you go ahead and Bamidele, I'm turning everything back over to you. I just wanted to share.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Oh, I just wanted to, you basically said what I was going to say about the sister playing the kora. She's one of, I believe, the first recognized woman kora players, because they most have previously been men. And the school that she's started, the Gambia, I believe it's called the Gambia Academy, it reminds me of Iliomade. They wear African uniforms. They're taught drumming and music, you know, along with the academics. So if you go online and check it out, it's really interesting.
All right, thank you for sharing. Brother Minister Shango has his hand up. Go ahead, brother.
I was just going to say, somehow I had the vibration of the harpsichord when I was listening to it, the way it sounds, the harpsichord.
You know, when I heard it, I could not help but think of Sister Destiny Muhammad.
Harp.
Yeah. And so, you know, even though those are drastically different instruments, but they are stringed instruments nevertheless.
Right.
And that sister is really proficient in playing.
No
Right.
question. No question. Yep. All right, bro.
Okay, how do I get back to the
Just click share screen at the bottom.
okay. Okay, and so we see the kora instrument here. Let's see. Okay, I can't move to the next
Maybe if you click just do a click and it might go to the next slide.
I'm trying to do that. Let me see. Let me see if I can get somebody to help me. Hold on just a minute.
What about the page down? Oh, he's gone.
I love these instruments, and yeah, the banjo comes from Africa. I mean, when you see that, when you see the comparison. Okay.
Right.
But I thought about Sister Destiny Muhammad as well. She's came to mind for me.
Yes.
So
Yes.
they stop me. This is not screen. Okay, but it's not.
Mama and Guinea, I've been missing not seeing you.
I know. I'm good, but
Okay.
I just have to comb my hair so I can show my face.
No, I'm talking about it, Rose.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for that.
Right.
All right. I'm working on it.
If you need something, let me know.
Thank you so much, Bubba.
Okay.
All right, as we continue with the musical gifts that Africans brought to the Americas, it's important for us to look at the in the upper left-hand corner, the upper left-hand image, is a man playing from Appaloosa, Louisiana, playing a bowed instrument. And so we see the bowed instrument, and often these instruments have a very tight string or a piece of wire. And for a resonator, he's using a beer can. So this is Schlitz beer can. But notice below is a bowed instrument from West Africa. And so it's being played by a woman. And notice that her mouth, she plays this with her mouth. And he's doing the same thing. And so that's one instrument. Then at the bottom here to the right, we see an image from Angola. And this is a person playing the birimbau. And in the upper right, we have the image of Brazilians playing the birimbau. This was an instrument traditionally played by men, and particularly today it accompanies the martial arts, choreographed martial arts form known as capoeira. And so the capoeiristas would make their movements to this stringed instrument. And so, it resonates, the gourd resonates by placing it next to the body. And there is a coin, and then there is a coin that's held in the finger, or a small coin-like figure object. And then, there is a little stick that's used to strike the chord. And we see here in Brazil, we see virtually this instrument has been unchanged. And so we see the direct transfer of bowed instruments, both in South America and in the United States. And so we have memories of Africa. And this is a photograph from around the 1970 or 1971. So this is not anything that's old. This is still contemporary. One other way that we remembered Africa is in hair and the artistry of hair. And the artist here is Sonia Clark, who has done a number of works around the issue of, created a number of paintings, drawings, sculptures, and textile art pieces that focus on the hair. And so we see her pieces here, and using even her own head for the geometric motifs and the design elements that we see in women's hairstyles. And so we see more of them. And where the cursor is, can you read that, what that says? Right
Good
here.
hair.
Good hair.
Good hair.
Good hair. This is what you can do with good hair.
I say.
And it reminds me of something a few years ago, Tony Brown, on Tony Brown's journal. For some reason, he had an image of Billy D. Williams, and he said, "Oh, this is when Billy D. had good hair." Before he had an image of himself with processed hair, or some chemical processing of his hair. And so Sonia takes this a bit further, and we're looking at Abraham Lincoln, who, according to J.A. Rogers, was said to have been a person with African ancestry. Now, I am not trying to make Abraham Lincoln African by any means, by any stretch of the imagination, but that is out there in North American lore. Some people refute it, some people believe it, but as an artist, she said, okay, let me move forward. And so she created art based on the art on top of the $5 bill. And when we think of Africanity and memory, we have here baskets from the South Carolina and Georgia Sea Islands. A few last year or a year and a half ago, I think Saraswati gave a presentation on the Gullah. And so these are baskets from the Gullah population. And they are coiled These are coil grass baskets. They are made with palmetto fronds and coil grasses or pine needles are used. And so these are called fancy baskets, but baskets like these were made for sturdy farm work. And rather than using the pine needles that are sewn together or row upon row with the palmetto strips, and palmetto is a element from the palm tree. Instead of the lightweight materials, sometimes Russells were used in creating these very sturdy baskets. But you see the coil grass basket, the memory of that is found in coil grass baskets that are in West Africa. And so we see where the cursor is to the left, we see a utility basket. And here we see a cover that's made to the right. This is a cover for a top. Often, you know, these basket woven tops are placed to cover jars or pottery. And so we see this remembrance of Africa. Now, I find this photograph from the either the latter days of slavery or the early days of the late 19th or early 20th century is an important photograph because we see people with brooms and using the brooms to even sweep the yard. And, you know, you see that in West Africa today. And so we even have this memory of making sure that everything is clean, not only the yard space, we even include grooming the yard, if you will. And in this case, it must be cut and trimmed, but where you have the soil, it's okay for it to be swept. And in some cases, even patterns are swept into the yard itself. And so there is much broom lore in our community. You know that if you were one of the let me go back. When I was a kid, you know, we all had duties, you know, and there were four children in the household. One would wash the dishes, one would dry the dishes, one would sweep the floor, one would mop the floor. And so, you know, when it was my turn to, you know, to sweep the kitchen, I would try to rush through the duties and get through with that. And my father would be sitting at the table. He said, "Boy, don't hit me with that broom." And if I should accidentally touch him with the broom, what do you think he would do? Somebody.
I can tell you, he would spit on it.
That's right. He would take that broom, he would snatch it out of my hand. And even though he could not explain what he was doing, as if to assuage the spirit in the powerful spirit in the broom, he would spit on it. And so we carry Africa forward. Now, I wouldn't think of asking, I did not then, and I certainly would not now, even though he's deceased now, but I would never have thought to say, "Why are you spitting on the broom? What is that supposed to do?" And even though I wondered what that was supposed to do, but the broom was so important. And if you remember some of those early Hollywood movies, and particularly focusing on slavery, and sometimes you would see Mammy chasing somebody out of her kitchen and she'd raise her broom up. Sometimes, you know, in the community where I lived, you know, "Don't you make me take that broom to you." Sometimes older grandparents might say that to a grandchild that was acting in a disapproving manner. And not that the grandmother or the grandfather would strike the child with a broom, but it was a sufficient threat to let them know that their behavior had transgressed the moral or the appropriate order of things. And so we have, so brooms were significant, and there was a lot of folklore. You don't want to sweep at night or sweep the contents of the floor out of the kitchen at night. You didn't want to be hit with a broom or touched with a broom. And so during slavery, as we are looking at this image here, this is a marriage. And so, and they're about to lay down the broom, this couple, the woman and the man here, so that they will jump over the broom, so that even when we were denied legal marriages, we found a way to solemnize our marriages by jumping the broom and acknowledging the spirit force in the broom. And so, there was the folklore goes that whoever touched the broom would be the one that would die first. And so folks tried to jump in unison and try to jump over the broom. And today, we're looking at this image in the lower right-hand corner. And so this is a contemporary couple, and they have married, and they're jumping the broom. Often the jumping the broom ceremony is a complement to the ceremony with a minister. And you will see that this is even in a church. So we have brought our Africanity, if you will, into our church services. What some people would perhaps regard as hoodoo folklore or hoodoo beliefs and practices, we've even brought them into the church. Now, isn't that interesting? And you know, folk would absolutely deny the idea of hoodoo in church. And so, nevertheless, we see this work by Varnett Honeywood, and it's called I Do Thee Wed, and it's a tribute to her grandparents. And so she has the broom that's there to represent the fact that they were married, that they had, and my great-grandfather would say that he didn't marry, he jumped the broom. And so that was one way of him affirming that he followed a traditional practice. But of course, jumping the brooms were not known, to my knowledge, known to Africans. This was something that was introduced to them by the Europeans. I think in some, I forgot which British Isle, but one of the British Isles. And but given the fact our lore around the broom and its importance to Black people, it became a sacred implement. It became a very powerful implement. And so people did not want to be touched with the broom, because to do so would might indicate being laziness is swept upon you. And so you're not really, if you're touched with the broom, you would become lethargic. Yes, Shango.
Wow.
You know, what's interesting about what you're saying, I'm thinking about my mom now. If I would be sweeping, if I somehow would brush the broom across her foot or something, she would always spit and say, "Boy, don't be putting that broom on my shoe." And I said, "Okay, Mom, whatever." It's just funny how things go on travel
Yes.
through time. Right.
And that's what my father would do too. And in this particular, and you know, the power of the broom is so important. In this piece by Betty Saar, the artist, who's based in Los Angeles, this is called The Liberation of Aunt Jemima. And what she took was an image of the mammy figure, and this was traditionally a notepad, you know, this space here. And so this would sit by your telephone, and if you, so that you could take messages, and or the Europeans that own this, European Americans that own this artifact could take messages. So it was a way of making Mammy perpetually work for them. But she left the broom, but she also put a clenched fist in front of this additional Mammy figure holding the white baby, and she gave her a rifle and a pistol. And so the liberation of Aunt Jemima. Okay, so, you know, and so and you know, and notice that the Aunt Jemima figure in the background as well. And so, you know, we've seen these cookie jars, we've seen Aunt Jemima on pancake boxes and so forth. And so she said, okay, it's time for Aunt Jemima to be liberated. So there goes. And here are some brooms, as you know, the smaller brooms that you would see in West Africa. And when I was giving this presentation one time, some people from Nigeria were in the audience, and they said, Bamidele, you know, if a person had a roadside stand and they had to leave their stand, they would put a broom in the corner and hang it in the corner of their stand. And so that if anybody, and they would leave, sometimes they would have to leave their stand, but if they weren't going to close it up. So if anybody wanted to come and make a purchase, they would come and then leave the fair price of the produce that they wanted to take. But if somebody had nefarious intentions, they would take the broom, you know, they would be forced, quote unquote, forced to pick up the broom and sweep until the owner came back, and the culprit would have been caught because they could not ignore the command that the broom had placed over them to just stay there and sweep until the owner came back. Now, brooms were also important among the Yoruba, because if a man suspected his wife was not faithful, he would take one of these straws from the broom, and I'm calling it straw, but it's not really straw, and he would place it under the threshold that the man who was cheating with his wife would have to cross. And so that person, once they crossed the threshold, would, as one researcher said, give up the ghost. He would die. And so we see that brooms have a strong, powerful element, so that we can see why people would jump the broom, because the broom had a sacral force in it. And when we think about brooms, you know, Omolu, and I'm so sorry I don't have an image of Omolu with me here today, but Omolu is, we know that Omolu Omolu is his name particularly in Brazil, but he's also called Babalu, and in Cuba he's known as Babalu Aye, Father, Lord of Life. And so Babalu Aye carries a broom as his a scepter-like shaped broom, and so that becomes very important. Yes, Shango. And I can't see everybody else's hand, so if you need to speak, just speak up.
Oh, now, you know what's interesting, when you said Babalu, I thought about I Love Lucy, because Ricky would always be talking about Babalu. And also when I was in Cuba, I think on the Santeria or whatever, they have that Arisha there, Babalu also.
Yes, yeah, it is Babalu. And so what's important, about, and thank you for mentioning I Love Lucy, because we have African spiritual lore that's taken from Africa or the Yoruba to Cuba. It comes from Cuba to North America, and we learn about Babalu by way of a situation comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Yes.
all of these things are so intertwined. And so when we would sing, when I was a kid, I watched I Love Lucy, and that was my favorite, one of my favorite programs. And of course, every time Ricky Ricardo would sing Babalu, 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 Aye. Just 1 second, please. Yes, I'll have to talk to you later. Mhm, mhm, mhm. I'm so sorry about that interruption. But again, so we see brooms are very important in African American folklore and in African Caribbean lore, in African lore, so that we have a connection between um, the Black world. And so I am now in this particular set of images, I'm focusing on the use of mortars and pestles. Now, the mortar, if we're looking at in this the African image that I'm looking at to the right, the mortar is the carved out trunk, or portion of a trunk of a tree, and then the pestles are these longer uh, um, staffs, if you will. Now, in this particular case, this is a case of product transfer to the Americas. This is South Carolina, Sea Islands in the early 20th century. These two images to the left. One is a male and one is of two females. But in all cases, these persons are trying to dislodge, they're thrashing grains, like rice or wheat. And so they're separating the grain from the chaff, or the husk, if you will. And so that's this thrashing takes place in West Africa, as well as the United States of America. You find mortars and pestles in South America. You find mortars and pestles in Afro-Cuba lore, and you find it in Afro-Brazilian lore as well. And so this is an important cultural transfer. But let's say, for example, it's rice that they are processing the food. In the upper hand, we see two images from South Carolina Sea Islands again. And so we see to the left where the cursor is, we see somebody is fanning. She places the product, the right, I will say rice right now, rice and the husks, and she will bounce it up and down with emotion. And in the process, when it's lifted up in the air, the husk will blow away. Just as you see here in the lower image from West Africa, the same process is used. In the right image, the upper right image from South Carolina, you see sometimes another way of dealing with this is to pour the rice slowly out, and the wind would blow the chaff away. Excuse me, just 1 second. Okay, I'm sorry. My phone is ringing, and let me just turn it off. But please remind me to turn it back on. Okay. Now, so this image, sometimes, you will tilt the fan or basket at an angle so that, and you're pouring the contents into a basket that's sitting on the ground. And so as it drops, the lightweight material, in this case, the husks or the chaff, would be whisked away by the wind. And so the same thing is being done in West Africa. And so this is still a process for processing food grains in South Carolina today. Even though these pictures are from the 20s and the 30s. But notice this thatch roof on the house. And notice the thatch roof on this house. Now, you know, or that barn, I should say. I said house, but this is her a barn-like construction. And so sometimes even on the plantation, we constructed houses or structures in a manner that resembled what we knew in West Africa. And so even that image survived into the 20th, or that process of putting thatch on the roof survived into the 20th century. Okay, as we move forward, we're looking at kente cloth. This is a beloved textile in North America, but it is certainly from the Akan people of Ghana. And notice that, you know, you can read each of these ideograms have a message so that you can read the cloth. Now, these are narrow bands that are sewn, that are woven and then sewn edge to edge. So this is one narrow band sewn to the next, and then so forth and so on. And so it is the way that you form a larger piece of cloth by once a narrow band of, let's say, 3 to 4 inches is woven, and they're sewn next to each other, you create the larger cloth. Well, African Americans took that memory. These quilts don't look like kente cloth, but they carry the same aesthetic principle of strips. And so these are called strip cloth, not strip cloths, they're called strip quilts. And so so this is one strip, this is strip 2, strip 3, strip 4, strip 5, strip 6. Christopher, I can't talk to you now. Please, I'm giving a lecture. Okay. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. And so we see this same thing in another quilt. So we have one strip, let me go back. And so we have 3 primary strips, and then they're held together with smaller strips of pieces of cloth, but often they have been pieced into strips as well. And so we see different kinds of combinations. And in the next slide, we see another strip quilt, and it encompasses the flying geese motif. These triangles are flying geese, and we know that geese would, when they fly, they would often fly in a V shape. And one of the reasons why this motif is important, some people have, with the book Hidden in Plain View by Tubin and Dobart, I forgot their first names, but they put forth the idea that these were quilts on the Underground Railroad. Now, a number of people have since discounted that that notion, because out of all the enslaved persons that were interviewed in the 30s and 40s, no one mentioned the fact that this was the case. no one talked about this in the quilt making traditions, but equally significant, no one since Dobard and Tubin published their book has anyone else found data to replicate that. And so the book is standing out there on its own. But nevertheless, so some people say, okay, this is more of an urban legend or more of a wish by some academics. But nevertheless, um, this this motif is important because it, if it did give a signal, one of the lessons would have been, we know that geese fly south in the winter, and they fly. Wait a minute, I get this. I want to make sure I get this correct. Geese fly north.
You had it right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they fly south. I have them outside.
Okay, thank you. They fly south. But they would, but so that if you're going to escape, it might be easier to escape not in the winter time, because geese fly south, and so take your cue from them. You remain in the south, but go to the north when it is when the summer. Your escape would be easier. So these theories become very important. We look at Romare Bearden's Bearden. I told you that he was one of my favorite artists, and so we have this quilt, a strip quilt that he has created in this a collage that he's made. And so we come to the presence of Afro-Carolinian face vessels. We don't know why these images were made. And so for some people, it's perceived to have, some persons have thought that perhaps these were ancestral figures in some way, shape, form, or fashion. They are such small pots, they could hardly, be used to quench one's thirst, but nevertheless, we have them. Now, notice also the eyes are white and the teeth are white. And that's through the use of kaolin, a deposit that, one finds in the earth or the earth's crust. But kaolin is also the basis of kaopectate. And so,
Wow.
so we have the use of these materials in these clay pots that were made. And so this one is from the South Carolina area. And but the reason why I think this is so important is because the African American face vessel mimics the heart-shaped motif. Notice here the heart-shaped motif for the face. Notice here the heart-shaped motif for the face. And so we find that carried forth not only in African sculpture, but African American sculpture as well. So when we think of carvings or walking sticks, these are from those to the left are from the South Carolina Sea Islands. And this is from I think from the Congo area. And so we see the coiled serpent on the staff, and we see a serpent coiled around this particular piece. Now, these were made by a person in Georgia who had the praise name Stick Daddy because he would carve sticks. And so that became his name. It's okay. Okay. And so he would carve sticks. And so that was very important to him. As we come to this section, we come back to music again, but music in church. And notice this is a piece by Varnett Honeywood, and this is a drawing from a drawing from the period of slavery. And so I put these two quotes. A.B. Wyndham composed a song that we used to sing in the church that I grew up in. It's called "Now Let Us Sing Till the Power of the Lord Come Down." Lift up your head, don't be afraid. Now let us sing till the power of the Lord come down. And it was written in Black English. He didn't say till the power of the Lord comes down. He said, come down. So, and so, in this piece by Varnett Honeywood, we see people are ecstatic in church. And so part of their ecstasy is we can see the raised hands of the choir member, of the minister, and so forth. But notice also this woman over here to the far left side. Notice that she is shouting. She has one hand raised and one hand stretched out with her fan, and her head is raised up. And so it reminds me of that song, A.B. Wyndham song, "Now Let Us Sing Till the Power of the Lord Come Down." Lift up your head, don't be afraid. Now let us sing till the power of the Lord come down. African people in Nigeria, among the Yoruba, believe that there are certain songs, certain rhythms, certain beats that can bring the spirit of the Orisha forward. And by the Orisha, I'm speaking of the divine beings. And so, so this is not a foreign concept. And so in Haiti, people do the same. If you go to a Vodou ceremony, people sing down the spirits of the divine beings. And so years ago, James Cleveland, the gospel singer, recorded "Something Got a Hold of Me." Oh, yes, it did. I said, something got a hold of me. Something hit me, top of my head. It went on down through my feet. Something got a hold of me. Of course, he goes on to identify that power as the Holy Ghost. The Holy Ghost, yeah. Holy Ghost, yeah. But nevertheless, that Africanity still lives in this. And so when we see I think this painting in the to the right is by Jonathan Green. And so people dance in church, and so we see this a contemporary expression taking place in church.
Brother Bamidele, Sister Saraswati has her hand up.
Oh, okay, yes.
So I definitely, can relate to, the dancing in church and the freedom and everything that it feels. But one of the songs that always transported me and just didn't feel like it belonged in America was this song. I don't know if you know it. It's "I Love the Lord, He Heard My Cry." And so the person says that, and then everybody starts moaning very slowly. And it just, it seems so ethereal, so different from any other song that I ever remember singing in church. It was just different.
Absolutely. And I would probably describe it a bit as emotive, and yes, it would definitely put you in it would transport you to another place, so to speak. But people get transported also with energetic songs or energetic dancing. And sometimes, that organ will hit a note and people will jump up and they will start moving. And sometimes it will go for, they will take what is called a Holy Ghost break. And so sometimes it might be 15 minutes, it might be 40 minutes, depending. And so, once the spirit shows up, you have to let the spirit ride its course. We used to sing "Ride on King Jesus," and then no man can hinder me. And so that notion that once the spirit is there, you can't just simply stop it. And so I found these images of the egungun. The egungun are ancestral spirits among the Yoruba. And so here they are standing still, and here they're in movement. And so if you can imagine, these things are moving so rapidly, they have uh, the older persons that are in them sometimes uh, have the spirit of athletes, if you will, or the wherewithal of athletes in their choreographic performances. And not that they would call them performances. That's a term that I'm using. And so when we think of these movements, and here's an artist, Bing Davis. He is trying to capture that sense of movement in these these drawings. He also does it in paintings. And so when this figure spins, it creates a powerful fusion of color. And so that fusion of color is often placed at the far right of his paintings. But then he details some of the geometric motifs that one sees in the egungun lappets, or these pieces are known as lappets. And so they fly out like the propellers of a, what do you call that? I'm trying to think of the aircraft.
Helicopter.
Helicopter. Thank you very much. And so, but Bing said that when he went to Nigeria, he saw something that was so familiar to him because he related it to dancing in church. And women in some of those wide hoop dresses sometimes would spin in church. And so so that's not new, or it was not new to him. And so we see him creating another drawing in his studio. But then this is a painting, which was a mural that was installed in a community college, Dayton, Ohio. It's important to know when I love the Sea Islands. I did some of my field work there many years ago, 50 years ago to be exact. And here we have paint blue. People protect their houses by putting this particular color of blue around the windowsills and on their doors. Not every house does that, but people do so as a way of protecting nefarious spirits from entering their homes. And sometimes they protect nefarious spirits from entering their homes by creating bottle trees. Now, if you watch the story on the life of Ray Charles, I think there was a bottle tree in the front of his home. And so this is uh, transferred into the work of Allison Sarr. We saw the Aunt Jemima piece earlier. That was by Betty Sarr. These works are by Allison Sarr, her daughter. And so she goes to African-American folklore and ideas of protection and creating this as an extension of the hair or the head. And then when we think of powerful women, we think of the conjure woman. And so we see here this work by, the left is by Romare Bearden, and to the right is a piece by two artists. The woman who did the stamp,
Is it Cynthia St. James?
Cynthia St. James, and this was Cynthia St. James and another artist. And notice that each person is holding, in the Bearden piece and in the Cynthia St. James piece, the woman is holding the botanical material in her left hand. And so the left hand is powerful. And so these persons are known as conjurers, or the conjure man or the conjure woman, the root worker, the root man, the root woman, or the doctor. And they engage in conjure, root work, or some people say trick. And so Christine Nelson from the Georgia Sea Islands said, conjure is magic some folks is born with. It gives them power over things other folks don't understand. They can work that power for good or bad. They can put a spell on you and lift a spell some other root worker have put on you. If a root worker break your spirit, he can handle you like he want to. And so that's my effort to read Gullah. And so here is another statement. Aunt Sally, the conjure woman, she could tell fortunes and give hands and fix your enemies for you. What is a hand? Someone, anybody. Okay, a hand is a talisman, an amulet, something that's a protective device. And so we see the conjure woman, her domain is the forest. She goes into the forest. It's where she gets leaves. It's where she encounters animals, and it has not been trampled by human civilization. And so we see her left hand, the powerful hand, is rendered larger than the diminutive white hand. And here she's special because we can tell that we can see her at her elbow. We can see the skeletal, some sense of her skeletal portion of her body. Notice her eyes. There's a belief that conjure women can change into animals. And so these are the eyes of a dog in this particular work of art. And so, but notice that she also can handle the serpents. And so there was a woman in Georgia, Pipe Ellen, who was said to be 122 years old when interviewed. And so this is Pipe Ellen's encounter with conjure. Right here in Savannah, a woman would claim to be my friend root mocked me. I ain't afraid to call her name because she's dead now. It was Flossie Hopkins. She fixed me with tobacco. You see, she knowed I love tobacco. She worked a root on me so strong that she put a snake in my bed, and I could feel things moving all through my body. I could feel the snake running all through me. Then I hear a noise, and it keep on. So I say to myself, a snake is in here. I get up to set the lamp in the middle of the room. The snakes show up. I close all the cracks around the house so nothing could get out. Next thing I know, that woman was knocking at my door. When I let her in, she grabbed that snake and threw it across her shoulder and walk out. If I had killed that snake, a man told me it sure would have been Flossie Hopkins. He told me to get a box of double lye. Then dug under my doorstep and took a bundle of roots. There was red pepper and sulfur and salt and some other kind of powder. He sprinkled, and when she says he sprinkled, he's referring to the double lye. He sprinkled this all around the place and say, I need never be afraid because this would kill any conjure put down for me. And so we have the belief in the belief in conjure and the belief that animals could be put in people's bodies and could pester them and they can be pulled out, or that one could use a snake for nefarious purposes and inspirit that snake. And so we see that in West Africa today, you can go to the market. You don't have to go to the forest, but you can get all of these pieces that elements that can be used in creating your medicinal treatments. And so there was a woman in Arkansas named Aunt Caroline Dye. And so she was said to be able to work magic very well. And so I put this image of Circe, created by Romeo Bearden in his story, when he tells the story of Odysseus and Odysseus wandering. And notice that Circe has turned this person into an animal, a pig-like form. She's holding a serpent. And so Circe, in Bearden's imagination, was a conjure woman. And so as we come to the conclusion of this presentation, I wanted to conclude it with a focus on grave decorations. And so we see to the right an image of a grave from the Congo. And we see from the left a grave from the South Carolina Sea Islands. In this, and on the lower case, we see also from the South Carolina Sea Islands, but the use of shells representing the sea. And so this is important because we know that particularly the sea is a liminal place, and it was a place for folk to cross the river or the ocean and go back to Africa. And so it was a transporting medium, if you will. And so we see grave goods that are sprinkled all on top of these various graves in the lower right-hand image. And so I want to simply close by saying that I ain't never left nothing in no Africa. No, you didn't leave anything. Your ancestors brought Africa with them. Now we have transformed it over time, and it has been creolized over time, but we've hidden Africa from the Europeans that enslaved the Africans. But in hiding it from the Europeans, we hid Africa so well that we hid it from ourselves. And so we can say with assurance, I ain't left nothing in no Africa, but we are African every day. And, you know, the phrase that I asked earlier, how many of us really do believe we are an African people? Whether we believe it or not, we act it out every day in what we do. All right, thank you so very much. Oh, let me go to the next slide. And so if you're interested in some books, Alvia Wardlaw teaches at Texas Southern University. And so she pulled together this book, Black Art, Ancestral Legacy. And of course, you're familiar with the writings of Robert Farris Thompson, Flash of the Spirit, and then John Blatch has two excellent books that are out, The Afro-American Tradition and Decorative Arts, and By the Work of Their Hands, Study in Afro-American Folk Life. Thank you all. You all have been a good audience. I mean, I tried to get you to raise questions or to make comments, but I appreciate those of you who did. Thank you so much. And I apologize for those incessant telephone calls that I received.
Hello, everyone.
Don't forget to turn your phone back on.
Thank you.
Excellent presentation.
Excellent, excellent, great presentation. And we see why you're the curator of the museum. I mean, what a beautiful tribute to the ancestors. What a tribute connecting us, showing us that we keep Africa and the cultural and the spirituality of Africa within us, the way that we play our instruments, the way that we make quilts, the way that we just do so many things. Thank you, Brother Bamidele, for that excellent presentation. It was.
And Baba, can I say one thing?
Yes, please.
About the broom. As a child, we were told that when someone would sweep your feet, you had to spit on it. Mostly the men, because they would be afraid of getting in trouble and going to jail. That was behind it. And another thing with the broom, in those days, people did not call you when they visit. They just showed up. If they stayed too long, your mother sometime would have you go turn the broom upside
Stand
down,
down. Yes.
or take a glass and put a dish towel in it in order for them to leave.
Wow.
So I'm from Louisiana. I know a lot.
Yeah, and I'm from I'm from Texas, but my mother's people are all from Louisiana, and so that heritage is so very strong. And you know, you can take people out of Africa, but you can't take the Africa out of the people.
True. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I didn't see all of it. I'm in transition. I'm working. We did a Black History program at the Foster City Library in Guza Saba all year long. That's the theme. And I'm currently getting ready to deliver some meals to the community. I just want to thank you, but I also want to come in and say to the Woze family that unfortunately, Baba Pete, Mama Keisha's husband, transitioned today. Yeah, so we're gonna keep them lifted in prayer. And she was on her way to meet me at the library, and they got a call, and my friends took her to the facility that he was staying in, and they're what two of our friends are with her right now, and they understood that I was working. So just keep her lifted in prayer, and send her some cards and emails, and let's love her and hug on her the way she needs to right now. And Baba Bamidele, I really want to get with you. Maybe we could do something at the library in Oakland. And I just got a lot of things. Even Mama Keisha wants to talk to you in regards to all of the art that she has. She has some beautiful art that she wants to know if maybe the museum would be interested in it. So let's connect. I tried to reach out to you a couple of times, but I'm not quite sure if I have the right number.
Oh, okay. Yes. You can call me at my on my cell phone, or you can call me at the office. The office number is 510-637-0200.
Okay.
I can't put it in the chat. I'm not that 510-637-0200.
Thank you so very much. So I'm
Thank
off
you.
to the community. I love y'all. Thank you. Call Mama Keisha.
All right.
And thank you and the group there, Sister Thunderway, for taking such good care of her.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. From Mama Connie and Bamidele, Bamidele, just enchanting. Thank you,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you so very much. Well, I thank you all for listening to me and for this period of time. And I know that it is time for the women of Wose to meet.
All right. Thank you again, Brother Bamidele. And so we're going to ask our brethren, myself included, we're going to have to leave now and let the women of Wose gather. And we give thanks for that. And we hope to see you next week for another great presentation in Black Knowledge Matters. Thanks, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Everyone.